Ladies and gentlemen, getting darker outside, getting later on into the evening on the East Coast in the United States. Here, of course, we're in New York City at the MLG Studios. I'm axeltoss, joined by axslav, watching WCS America Challenger League. Before we proceed, Full Sail University, of course, if you're looking to get into graphic design, video game production, stuff like that, check out fullsail.edu/MLG. They'll have you fill in some information about yourself, and then they'll send some information back to you, and you can find out if Full Sail is the proper fit for you. Again, Full Sail is the official education partner of MLG. That being said, it's been a very fun day so far today. A lot of exciting matches. Of course, we just saw Theognis take down State in a very exciting best of 3 there. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the brackets to see where we stand. As we're nearing the end of this round 2 of the bracket stage of the Challenger League. So far, we've seen Top take down Phoenix, Major take down Ian, Jim over Vibe, and of course, Theognis over State. Top Apocalypse, Major, Violet, Scarlet, Jim, Sen, Theognis. They're the guys remaining. Those matches will be for who's going to advance to the Premier League Season 2. Of course, on the other side of the bracket, got some similar stories. Kapach versus Nestea, Puck versus Suppy, Polt versus Tage all coming your way over the next 2 days. And of course, we have the last match of the night coming up. It's going to be XY versus Demuslim. The winner play the STC. Of course, it's going to be a TVT. 2 very handsome gentlemen there. Of course, I guess we'll start with Demuslim. He's, of course, from the UK. But has been living in the United States for quite a long time. Again, training at the EG House, and he is pretty darn good at StarCraft. He hasn't had spectacular tournament results recently, but he is the ladder warrior and is always near the top of that Grandmaster ladder.
It's very surprising. Demuslim's one of those guys who looks so great, but when he goes to these premier events, when he goes to the MLGs, the DreamHacks, the WCS, large stage events. In the past, he hasn't really had that success. So WCS America is kind of where he's going to put his foot down and say, okay, 2013, this is my time to shine, to finally take down one of these big Premier Leagues. And that's what he's aiming for here with this Challenger division. But he's got to win this match, and he's got to win the next. And then in Season 2, if he makes that Premier League, that's where he can really make his mark.
Of course, Demuslim, again, qualified through the Challenger League qualifier and defeated Maker in the first round of the Challenger League bracket. Of course, he's facing off against XY, which we don't know too much about. He's one of those Chinese players that's, again, trying to make a name for himself, trying to get that experience, on a worldwide scale. Represents Team Invictus Gaming, and he also came through the Challenger League qualifier, defeating Hello Kitty in the first round.
That's right, and one thing to consider is, Demuslim, he's looked amazing if you watch his stream, but again, when he played Maker, he struggled just a little bit. He lost map 2 on Neo Planet S in a kind of base trade situation where Maker made the better base trade choices.
Yeah.
And so going forward, there's a little question mark. How is he going to fare against XY, who's a very strong player? Every single Chinese contender so far in WCS America has just showcased some amazing, amazing games.
We'll see what happens. Of course, the winner of this best of 3 will move on to play the STC. Let's find out who goes to the Premier League of Season 2. Map number 1 is going to be Akalon Wastes. And here we are in Game 1 of this best of 3. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this match. There's a lot of Demuslim fans out there. And we'll have to see how he fares here. Of course, in the bottom right-hand location, I present your Red Terran player representing Team Evil Geniuses, again defeating Maker 2-1 to get to this point. He is Demuslim. His opponent in the top left-hand location, hailing from China and representing Team Invictus Gaming, defeated Hello Kitty in the first round of the Challenger League bracket stage 2-1 to get to this point. He is XY. A player we don't necessarily know a lot about, and actually had the chance to ask Demuslim about that before his match today. He told me he's not sure how he plays, but I'm good at this game.
One thing I have to point out here. So Demuslim is using the same symbol by his command center that Neeb went for. And he wasn't able, Neeb lost 2-0. Whereas XY is using the symbol that Major went for, and Major won 2-0.
How do you remember these things?
I really pay attention to random details that have no meaning on the actual game. So going
okay, so I want to see stats. I want to see stats from you relating the symbols these players use to their win percentages.
You know, it may have some psychological effect.
It might.
Different symbols maybe give you a feeling of strength. Or some could be distracting. Like the muscle arm looks really cool, but it could be distracting. Every time you go back to your base, you're like, hey, I've got a muscle arm on my command center.
That seems like a valid concern that I'd have.
Yeah. So the builds are different as well, to note. The Muslim went for a gas first build, which of course means he can get a factory very fast. XY's gas has just finished, so he's about 100 gas behind, but XY, much faster orbital command than his opponent. And it looks like he's probably going to go for a reactor than a command center, a more macro-oriented build where Demuslim is focusing on his tech.
It's always interesting to see, how these guys play out game one, especially if they don't know a lot about each other. How safe do they play? How aggressive do they play? What kind of build do they go for? It's kind of a feeler game. Game number one to see, okay, what does my opponent have in store for me? What do I need to be looking out for in the future? So we're seeing Demuslim actually add on a second gas here, so he's definitely going to be investing a lot into this one base play. Meanwhile, we have a command center going down here from XY. So we're in a situation where Demuslim is investing a lot more into one base, whereas XY is being a lot more economic, which means the pressure is kind of going to be on Demuslim here to get some damage done.
You know what's interesting is the build XY did, most of the times I've seen this build, after the second Marine, unless their opponent's throwing a lot of Reapers at them early, they usually get that reactor. Now, XY is delaying the reactor a bit, which makes him safer against Reaper play, getting the 4 Marines out first. And, of course, he hasn't scouted his opponent, so he wants to make sure that. But it also means that he's going to be a little bit weaker against a draw play that hits about the, between the 5 and 6 minute marks. And the reason why is because the more you delay that reactor, the less Marines you have going forward into the game. So the situation where normally he might have 8 Marines, he's only going to have 6. And if you're fighting against, Widow Mines, Hellion Drops, or Banshees, these things can matter.
Speaking of which, we got the cloak upgrade beginning here for Demuslim, and also interesting to note, it's not like he tried to tuck any of these buildings in any particular location in his main. They're all in the middle, so it could be relatively vulnerable to a scan coming forward. We're approaching that timing in about 40 seconds or so from XY, so we'll definitely keep an eye on that, because XY is definitely going to want to be able to identify what his opponent is doing, so he can make the proper steps to respond. Of course, usually it involves an engineering bay of some sort. We're seeing XY adding on an armory, so we might see some Hellbat play going forward.
I love Hellbats.
Yeah.
Always so fun to watch Hellbat play. He's also reactoring out 2 Widow Mines, which is going to be cool because they can both deny the Muslim's guy in the front of his base. He can put one up there. And also, if he can figure out that Banshee play is around, he can position those Widow Mines to really impact the ability of the Banshee to harass. Of course, he still has to scan to reveal the Banshee.
He used both of his mules on both of his command centers.
Ooh, this is going to be a little bit tricky as the first Banshee is crossing the map right now. And this is where the Widow Mines are going to be super key, because he's going to be very short in scans. In fact, he's not going to have anyone at first hits, and then he's going to get a few scans, but each scan needs to count. And typically, if he does have a Viking and a couple Marines, if the opponent responds quickly, you can't kill Banshee with a single scan. Both Widow Mine hits you might be able, but the Widow Mines actually be moved across the map. There's almost nothing to defend. Vikings in production, but like you mentioned, there's no energy on the scans right now.
All right, the Banshee cloaking up. Marine's actually going to be running away here, want nothing to do with that Banshee. Now Demuslim is going to have to get some damage done. Remember, he's taking expansion much later, so it's a situation where he has to get damage done, but again, his opponent has no scans. It's going to be very tough for XY. Meanwhile, we have a drop heading to the main base of Demuslim with 2 Widow Mines and 2 Hellions inside, jetting straight for that middle line. There are some Marines and a Banshee here. A Widow Mine actually killing some SCVs, but taking that that medevac very low in health. The Widow Mine getting bro down. There's the scan. A shot does go off on some of those SCVs. The 2 Hellions going to die as well. Meanwhile, the Cloak Banshee still doing damage over there in the main base of XY. So it's one of those situations where we have to wait to take our breath, but these guys are trying to get a lot of damage done to each other's economies.
And it looks like the Muslims coming out ahead here, getting so many kills on this Banshee, whereas the Widow Mine drop was parried pretty efficiently. And this is just enough SCVs are dying. It's like, yes, you have that faster command center, but
right.
There's only so much you can take. He's trying to equalize with a Hellbat drop into Muslim's main. The medevac is very damaged.
Bunker actually getting salvaged there, but the medevac coming forward, trying to drop on top of those SCVs, trying to get those out of there. Again, as you said, the medevac very damaged, just going to go down to a Marine. These Hellbats are going to get tracked down as well. Have it trying to march towards those SCVs to Muslim, running for his life. The SCVs ripping each other aside to try to get away from the Hellbat, but it looks like not many workers killed there. So
yeah.
let's take a look at the game state here. Workers killed is 15-3 in favor of Demuslim. Demuslim is at 29 harvesters to 25, and his second orbital now being moved over.
not done yet. Another Cloak Banshee coming in here, of course, with the 2 missile turrets. And there's not too many units to even be killed in the middle of the base. Banshee going to be happy with targeting an add-on, perhaps going for one of the reactors.
It's like a tech lab for now. Again, he has a lot of energy to work with, so no reason not to try to force a scan from your opponent and try to duck out of there. There's the scan, and there's the ducking out of there.
Oh.
One does not simply.
No, with 2 Vikings, you're able to take that Banshee down. The Raven coming down from XY usually signifies mech play, although in this case, if your opponent shows Cloak Banshees, maybe you want to get it anyway, but definitely with that attack upgrade, we see XY going to be looking to do a mech transition. On the other hand, Demuslim hasn't tipped his hand yet, but more likely to be going bio, I think. But he's still getting Ravens, so it's made a lot of gas on that. No additional barracks with tech labs quite yet.
Let's see what happens. I mean, they're relatively even in supply here. 62 to 60, relatively even in harvesters, 37 to 35. So as crazy as that early game was, with all the Banshees and Hellbats all across the map, we're at a relatively equalized game state. Both these guys approaching the mid game with very similar builds. Of course, we have a faster third command center here from XY. While Demuslim adding on 2 additional barracks and then adding on that command center. But again, not a huge deal. It's going to come down to obviously positioning and what kind of aggression we're going to see in the mid game.
Demuslim using a nice little division of Marines and tanks to make sure all of his bases are safe from those Hellbat drops. Demuslim, the food is equal, but Demuslim is slightly ahead as far as army value because XY's pretty much entire value is in these Hellbats that are he's been able to crank out quite a bit of them. And they're a little bit of a cheaper unit. Of course, they're very strong as well. And now with 3 medevacs and having air control with the 2 Vikings and Raven, this could be a potentially very dangerous situation for Demuslim.
Gosh, we saw, was it Illusion, utilize a lot of crafty 2-base Hellbat timings that did a lot of damage. Oh, this Banshee is going to spot these 3 medevacs.
Oh, it's going to be taken out. The Raven saying, I don't even need to scan. Banshee's going down. 3 medevacs are spotted, like you mentioned. What is Demuslim going to prepare for defense? Is he going to get any missile turrets? Is he going to try to react route Vikings to take air controls? Or just going to use Marines and tanks to keep those units away from him?
The simple threat alone is already going to be, make XY a little bit happy. Of course, you'd rather that those 3 medevacs get by unscathed and try to get some damage done, but Demuslim definitely going to have to worry about that, even placing some Widow Mines in his own main base. I think he has a Viking down there too to watch out, while XY taking down these rocks into that sword. So maybe he can identify, okay, my opponent saw those 3 medevacs. He sees he's going to try to be defensive and worrying about that. Maybe I can take this 3rd. Maybe I can get this down fairly quickly and try to take an economic edge going forward.
Demuslim's going to look to be defensive until Stim Pack completes. A little bit of a drop here coming in from the bottom. 1 Viking's going to spot it, but that won't be quite enough to take it out on its own.
Remember, there were some Widow Mines in the main. I don't see them anymore. The Hellbat's going to try to drop them. Some Marines here, some tanks here as well at the same time. A drop heading toward the natural expansion as well. XY is everywhere trying to get this damage done, but great reaction time here from Demuslim at both fronts. And just like that, Demuslim takes a bit of a supply lead, minor as it is. Units lost 33 to 15 in favor of Demuslim, so he's going to be very happy with how that went.
Losing those 2 medevacs that went into the main is very, very significant. I mean, the Wonder Natural was able to escape, but really...
Oh, XY losing the medevac.
Yeah, XY.
Oh, I
yeah.
thought Demuslim.
No,
okay,
no,
okay.
The ones that were, carrying around those Hellbats.
Right.
That's a very significant hit. When you're going mech, you want to give a lot of medevacs to support your Vikings. Having to rebuild those cuts into your gas allotment, which is going to hurt your tank count. And tanks, of course, are the backbone of the mech army, at least in TVT.
Yes, absolutely. Now, the question is, how can Demuslim take advantage? But again, his opponent got his 3rd down pretty fast. He had additional factories being constructed during all that, so his production is about to get out of control. Already equalizing the supply count just like that, starting to set up turrets across his bases as his mineral income really gets up there. 1 Marine in the wrong place at the wrong time. Almost got crushed by the rocks, but instead got killed by a tank. I'm not sure which is the worst way to die.
I would rather get killed by a tank.
And then get crushed by rocks?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. A tank is a fast death.
Yeah.
Rocks, you never know. What if you just get partially crushed and it takes you 5 minutes to die?
That's very true.
That's rough.
I didn't think about that.
Not really where you want to be.
Yeah.
Either way, though, being killed kind of on your own on enemy territories is never very fun.
Yeah, that was pretty much destined to happen for that Marine. Before he left, he said goodbye to his family. But look at these guys. They're both kind of posturing on the middle of the map here.
4 medevacs with 8 Hellbats inside the army. Demuslim could run into trouble against this combination if he's not fully prepared.
Oh, the Vikings trying to target them down. The Marines not stimming just yet. Now stimming, trying to take these tanks off guard. And the tanks aren't actually sieging up. Demuslim going to kite away. The Medevac's coming forward, trying to drop on top of the tanks. Pretty cool move here from XY. And he's actually doing a lot of damage to Demuslim. One of the Medevacs just now dropping 2 Hellbats. And Demuslim's going to have to back away. What a great engagement there for XY.
And Siege Shank, just no match for the power of the Hellbat. The Muslim's army being shattered there, desperately trying to regroup. He has a Widow Mine in the front. That could be a very important aspect to his defense, but actually it's just going to die before it can even burrow, I think.
Trying to scuttle into the ground, a tank going to take it out before it gets down there, and the Muslim's going to have to back up. His tank count is pretty non-existent at this point. No tanks on the field. One is on the way in the main base, but XY powering forward here and setting up a great position outside of his opponent's natural.
I love how he's playing it slow and careful. You know, he knows that he can just slow push his way in. There's no tanks to stop the slow, methodical push forward. One tank from the Muslim moving up, but it's in range of XY and gets blown to pieces.
Wow, getting chopped up there, and this is not looking good for Demuslim. Still Hellbats inside of the inside 3 medevacs there from XY again, essentially dodging the splash damage. But look at this, Demuslim's like, you know what, I can do that too. Going to try to drop his bio on top of his opponent's tank army. The Hellbats, though, going to be dropped defensively for XY, and Demuslim is down in supply 156 to 111. XY charging into his opponent's natural expansion, and this could be the end for Demuslim in game 1.
Too many mech units rolling forward. Demuslim's trying to do what he can with the drop play, but against the Hellbat tank, oh, that was a really nice move, taking out 2 tanks there, but more just a moral victory as he knows the game was lost.
Wow, what a fascinating game there. Of course, you know, a situation that it kind of started with the Hellbat play that it seemed like Demuslim did a decent job defending against it, but then the speed of the third base from XY, as well as the speed of the additional production facilities, meant he could just make so many Hellbats and tanks at a time, loaded those guys up in the medevacs, and Demuslim just quite simply caught off guard in the middle of the map there.
You know, it's really one of those situations. It was almost similar to the Theognis State game, where if your opponent goes Hellbat heavy, you can't actually move on the map and fight them. We saw that State was very defensive when he was up against Theognis on this map against the mech. Demuslim needed to be very defensive against an opponent who's really utilizing a very Hellbat heavy composition in that early mid game. When he moved down the map and tried to challenge for map control, that's a situation where, you know, pound for pound, the Hellbat's going to take out the Marines without a problem. You really need to wait until you have a much higher Marauder count, a nice tank line that really has so much damage it can't be broken. Those early mid-game battles are always going to go towards the Hellbat heavy player. Yeah, really cool game there from XY. He's going to take the 1-0 victory in this best-of-3 to Demuslim in a situation where he must win 2 in a row. Guys, stay tuned. XY versus Demuslim, Game 2 coming up from WCS America Challenger League.